Under the relentless glare of a Wyoming sun, a stagecoach rattled into the dusty streets of Redstone, a frontier town carved from the rugged plains. Elizabeth Harper, clutching a worn leather satchel brimming with books and letters, stepped onto the sun-baked earth, her heart pounding with hope and trepidation. At 36, she had journeyed from Philadelphia, lured by promises of a new life, only to find her intellect, a treasure in her eyes, deemed a threat by the man who had summoned her. Yet in this untamed land where strength often overshadowed subtlety, one man, shadowed by a turbulent past, saw the brilliance others scorned. This is a tale of discovering value in what others discard, where true worth is forged not in conformity but in courage. Before we dive into Elizabeth's story, let us know where you're joining us from: Cheyenne, Chicago, or perhaps somewhere farther afield. If this tale stirs your soul, hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we've got something extraordinary waiting. Now let's ride back to Redstone, Wyoming, in the summer of 1880. Chapter 1: Arrival in Redstone. The stagecoach lurched to a halt outside the Redstone Inn, kicking up clouds of dust that danced like specters in the midday heat. Elizabeth adjusted her wire-rimmed glasses, smoothed the creases from her emerald-green traveling dress, and whispered to herself, "Audaces fortuna iuvat," fortune favors the bold. It was a Latin mantra that had steadied her through the long journey west. At 36, Elizabeth knew she was well beyond the age society deemed marriageable. In Philadelphia, she had embraced spinsterhood, finding solace in her library and her role as a school teacher at a progressive academy. But when the school board dismissed her, citing her overly scholarly demeanor as intimidating to male students and inappropriate for young ladies, she found herself unmoored. Her world, built on knowledge, had no place for her. Then came the advertisement in the Philadelphia Inquirer: "Prosperous Wyoming rancher seeks educated Eastern lady for marriage." The letters from James Caldwell, tucked carefully in her coat pocket, had warmed her heart through the cold months of correspondence. He wrote of his thriving cattle ranch, his loneliness since his wife's death 6 years prior, and his admiration for women who could bring culture to the frontier. His words were thoughtful, eloquent, promising a partnership of equals. After 6 months, Elizabeth had accepted his proposal, selling her modest collection of first editions and antique furniture to fund her journey to Redstone. As she stepped from the stagecoach, her polished boots sinking into Wyoming soil, Redstone revealed itself. A single main street lined with sun-bleached buildings, a general store with a faded sign, a saloon where grizzled men lounged, and a modest church with a crooked steeple. Curious eyes followed her, a solitary woman in a tailored dress, clutching a satchel and a wooden case of books. Elizabeth squared her shoulders, refusing to shrink under their scrutiny. "Miss Harper," a voice called. She turned, hope surging. A tall man approached, his broad frame clad in a tailored suit that seemed out of place in the rugged town. His hair was sandy blonde, streaked with gray, and his mustache neatly trimmed. This had to be James Caldwell. "Mr. Caldwell," she replied, extending a gloved hand. "I'm delighted to meet you at last." He took her hand, his grip firm but measured. "James Caldwell. Welcome to Redstone, Miss Harper." His gray eyes appraised her with a scrutiny that prickled her skin. "You're older than I pictured." Elizabeth stiffened, but kept her tone even. "I believe I mentioned my age in our correspondence, Mr. Caldwell. 36 last March." "Of course," he said, waving a hand as if swatting a fly. "It's just different in person. Come, I've secured a room at the inn. We'll discuss matters over supper." As they walked the short distance to the Redstone Inn, Elizabeth's excitement waned, replaced by a gnawing unease. James was handsome and clearly wealthy by local standards, but his gaze held a cold calculation absent from his letters. The inn was simple but tidy, with peeling wallpaper and threadbare rugs. The proprietress, Mrs. Abigail Turner, a stout woman with a warm smile, led Elizabeth to a small second-floor room. "Supper's at 6 sharp, Miss Harper," Mrs. Turner said. "Mr. Caldwell's reserved a private table." "Thank you," Elizabeth replied, setting her bags on the narrow bed. Alone, she unpacked with care, hanging her 2 best dresses, a navy silk and a forest green wool, in the wardrobe. On the bedside table, she arranged her treasures: her father's complete works of Shakespeare, her mother's embossed Bible, and her own dog-eared volumes of Whitman, Dickinson, and Plato in the original Greek. From her satchel, she retrieved a small daguerreotype of her parents, long gone, and placed it beside the books, a quiet anchor in this unfamiliar world. Chapter 2: A Disheartening Supper. At precisely 6, Elizabeth descended to the inn's dining room, her heart a mix of anticipation and apprehension. James Caldwell rose as she approached, his smile polite but strained. "You look rested," he remarked, gesturing to her chair. "I've ordered steak. It's the only thing worth eating here." "Thank you," Elizabeth said, though she would have preferred to choose for herself. "I'm eager to hear more about your ranch, Mr. Caldwell. Your letters mentioned it's 10 miles from town." "Indeed," he replied, his chest puffing with pride. 3,000 acres, the best grazing land in the county. Built it from nothing into the biggest operation around." "That's remarkable," Elizabeth said sincerely. "And you mentioned a library." Caldwell's expression flickered. "Well, I've got some books, ledgers mostly for the business." "Oh," Elizabeth said, masking her disappointment. His letters had painted visions of shelves, groaning with literary classics. The meal arrived, tough steak and overcooked potatoes, and they ate in silence, the clink of cutlery loud in the tense air. Caldwell's eyes roamed her face, lingering on her ink-stained fingers, evidence of her journal entries during the journey. "Tell me about your education again, Miss Harper," he said at last. "As I wrote, I studied at the Philadelphia Women's Academy," she began, her voice steady. "My father was a classics professor at the University of Pennsylvania, and he tutored me at home in Latin, Greek, and mathematics. He believed women's minds were as capable as men's, though society rarely agrees." She smiled faintly at the memory. Caldwell's fork clattered against his plate. "And your teaching position?" "You were let go." Elizabeth's cheeks warmed. "The school board found my methods unconventional. I encouraged girls to pursue higher education and boys to respect female intellect. It wasn't well received." Caldwell dabbed his mouth, his face unreadable. "I see. And what do you expect from marriage, Miss Harper?" "A partnership," she said honestly. "Mutual respect, shared interests. Your letters spoke of wanting an intellectual equal, someone to assist with your ranch's business and bring refinement to your home." Caldwell cleared his throat. "I may have overstated certain things. Truth is, Miss Harper, I need a practical woman, one who knows her place, who can manage a household without meddling in my affairs." The words hit like a physical blow. "I don't understand," Elizabeth said, her voice tight. "Your letters." "Letters can be misread," he interrupted. "I wasn't clear about my needs." "Needs," she echoed, her tone icing over. Caldwell leaned forward, voice low. "Redstone's a small town, Miss Harper. People talk. A man like me needs a wife who elevates his status, not one who upsets the natural order." "And what order is that?" she asked, though she knew the answer. "Men lead, women follow. Men build, women nurture. Men think big, women handle the small stuff. He sighed as if explaining to a child. Your education is excessive. I need a wife, not a professor. Elizabeth set down her fork, her hands trembling with restrained fury. Then we've misunderstood each other, Mr. Caldwell. Gravely. Perhaps, he said, leaning back. But you're a smart woman. You must see your options are limited. You've come all this way, spent your savings. Philadelphia's a long trip back, especially for a woman in your circumstances. The implication was clear. An educated spinster, past her prime, with no family or fortune, had few prospects. He expected her to bend to his terms out of desperation. Elizabeth rose, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I appreciate your candor, Mr. Caldwell, but I believe we'd both be better served by ending this now. His face darkened. Don't be rash, Miss Harper. I'm offering you security, respectability. What else do you have? My dignity, she replied, turning away. Good evening, Mr. Caldwell. She climbed the stairs to her room, his gaze burning into her back. Inside, she locked the door and sank onto the bed, her composure fracturing. Tears threatened, but she refused to let them fall. What now? She had funds for perhaps 2 weeks at the inn. Then what? Returning to Philadelphia was financially impossible, and even if she could, what awaited her? No job, no home, no family. A knock startled her. Wiping her eyes, she opened the door to find Mrs. Turner, concern etched on her face. Everything all right, miss? Mr. Caldwell stormed out, looking fit to burst. There's been a misunderstanding, Elizabeth said carefully. Mr. Caldwell and I won't be proceeding. Mrs. Turner's eyes widened. Oh dear. That leaves you in a bind, don't it? Not many single ladies here without kin. I'll manage, Elizabeth said, feigning confidence. Is there work in town? I'm a trained teacher, but I'm open to other roles. Mrs. Turner frowned thoughtfully. Town's too small for a real school. The saloon hires girls, but that ain't for you. She paused. Doc Wilson mentioned needing someone to read his medical journals and organize his files. His eyes ain't what they used to be. Hope sparked in Elizabeth's chest. That sounds promising. Could you introduce me to Dr. Wilson? First thing tomorrow, Mrs. Turner promised. For now, rest up. Western men can be stubborn as mules, but they ain't all like Caldwell. That man's got a reputation for wanting everything just so. Chapter 3: A New Path. After Mrs. Turner left, Elizabeth sat at the small desk, opening her journal. Writing had always brought clarity. Redstone, Wyoming Territory, July 14, 1880. My new beginning has crumbled before it began. James Caldwell is not the man his letters promised. He seeks a servant, not a partner. I will not diminish myself to soothe his ego. Yet my options are few, funds limited, future uncertain. I refuse to surrender who I am, even for survival. Tomorrow I meet Dr. Wilson. Perhaps there lies a chance. She closed the journal and moved to the window, gazing at Redstone's Main Street, now bathed in lamplight. The frontier's vastness stirred something in her, a sense of possibility that Philadelphia's rigid society had never offered. As she prepared for bed, a commotion outside drew her back. Across the street, men gathered outside the saloon, James Caldwell at their center, his face flushed with whiskey and wounded pride. Too damn learned, his voice carried. Spouting Latin and poetry, as if a woman's got any business with that. Came all this way for a wife, and I get a schoolmarm who thinks she's smarter than every man in Wyoming. Laughter erupted, and Elizabeth drew the curtains, her jaw tight with humiliation. By morning, Redstone would know of the mail-order bride too, educated for James Caldwell. Sleep evaded her, her mind wrestling with a lifetime's belief. Knowledge was power. Now it seemed her undoing. Dawn broke with harsh light piercing the curtains. Elizabeth rose, washing at the basin and donning her green wool dress, its Eastern elegance a quiet defiance. She braided her auburn hair tightly and descended to the dining room, bracing for gossip. The few early patrons barely noticed her, more focused on coffee than scandal. Mrs. Turner bustled over with eggs and biscuits. "Eat up, dear. We'll see Doc Wilson at 9. His office is by the general store." "Thank you for your kindness," Elizabeth said. "Nonsense," Mrs. Turner replied. "Caldwell's a fool if he thinks a woman can be too smart. His first wife could barely read, and she was miserable till typhoid took her." At 9, Mrs. Turner led Elizabeth to a neat building marked Dr. Samuel Wilson, M.D. The doctor, an elderly man with a white beard and spectacles, greeted them warmly. "Mrs. Turner, and this is Miss Elizabeth Harper from Philadelphia," Mrs. Turner said. "A trained teacher looking for work. I recalled you needing help with your records." Dr. Wilson's eyebrows rose. "Indeed. Come in, ladies." The office was orderly but cluttered, with medical books and journals stacked haphazardly. "You're educated in the sciences, Miss Harper?" Dr. Wilson asked as they sat. "My training is in classics and literature," Elizabeth admitted. "But I studied basic anatomy and chemistry for teaching. I'm a quick learner and skilled at organization." Dr. Wilson nodded. "My eyes struggle with fine print, and these journals are vital. I need someone to read research aloud, catalog notes, and handle correspondence." "I'd be honored," Elizabeth said, hope blooming. "Some patients may find a female assistant odd," he cautioned. "I've navigated delicate sensibilities before," she replied with a smile. "In Philadelphia, I convinced a school board that algebra wouldn't ruin young women for housework." Dr. Wilson chuckled. "I heard about your run-in with Caldwell. News travels fast here. Not everyone shares his views, Miss Harper. Some of us value learning, skirts or not." As they discussed terms, room and board at his home, modest pay, and a chaperone in his housekeeper, Mrs. Clara Evans, Elizabeth felt a weight lift. It wasn't the life she'd expected, but it was a start. Chapter 4: A New Role and an Unexpected Encounter. An hour after her meeting with Dr. Samuel Wilson, Elizabeth left his office with a secured position and plans to move into a modest room at his home that afternoon. The oppressive weight that had settled over her since her disastrous supper with James Caldwell eased, though uncertainty still lingered like a shadow. As she walked back to the Redstone Inn, her thoughts were interrupted by a commotion across the street. A group of men emerged from the sheriff's office, and at their center, hands bound, was a figure who commanded attention despite his predicament. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with jet-black hair falling past his collar and eyes that seemed to pierce through the dust and bustle of Redstone. Even as a prisoner, he carried himself with a quiet dignity that set him apart. Elizabeth paused, curiosity piqued, and asked a woman sweeping the boardwalk outside the general store, "Who is that?" The woman, Mrs. Martha Hayes, glanced up, her face tightening. "That's Lucas Kane, used to run with the Grayson gang, or so they say. Claims he's gone straight now. Got a ranch north of town, keeps to himself. But there's been cattle rustling lately, and Caldwell's got Sheriff Dawson convinced to haul him in for questioning." Elizabeth watched as Sheriff Dawson led Kane toward the jail. Just before entering, Kane paused, his gaze sweeping the street and for a fleeting moment locking onto hers. Something in that look, not recognition of her face, but perhaps of a shared sense of being misjudged, made her breath catch. Then he was gone, ushered inside, leaving Elizabeth with an inexplicable feeling that their paths would cross again. 3 weeks passed in a whirlwind as Elizabeth settled into her role with Dr. Wilson. The work suited her meticulous nature. Organizing patient records, transcribing notes, and reading aloud from medical journals while the doctor mixed remedies. Each evening, she retired to her cozy room in Dr. Wilson's home, where Mrs. Clara Evans ensured she was well fed and treated with respect. Yet, despite this sanctuary, Elizabeth couldn't shake the sense of being an outsider. Whispers trailed her through Redstone, the Eastern scholar too brainy for James Caldwell. Some regarded her with curiosity, others with suspicion, as if her intellect were a contagion. One stormy afternoon, as rain hammered the windows of Dr. Wilson's office, Elizabeth was alone, sorting a shipment of medical supplies. The doctor had been called to a complicated delivery at a ranch miles away, leaving her to manage any emergencies. The door burst open, sending rainwater across the floor. A grizzled cowhand staggered in, supporting a man whose face was masked with blood. "Doctor, Wilson's out," Elizabeth said, setting aside a vial of carbolic acid. "But I can help. Get him to the examination table." The cowhand, a regular at the general store named Tom Riley, hesitated. "No offense, ma'am, but you ain't no doctor." "I've assisted with enough treatments to know what's needed," Elizabeth replied firmly. "Your friend's bleeding badly, and Dr. Wilson won't be back for hours." "Shall I do nothing?" The injured man, groaning, settled the matter. "Just fix me, lady. Head's killing me." Elizabeth directed them to the table, her mind cataloging supplies: clean water, bandages, antiseptic. She worked swiftly, cleaning the blood to reveal a deep gash along the man's scalp. "What happened?" she asked, applying pressure to stem the flow. "Bar fight at Maginty's," Riley explained. "Jake here didn't take kindly to some fella insulting his mare. Other guys ring-cut him good." Elizabeth nodded, her focus unwavering. The wound required stitches, a procedure she'd observed Dr. Wilson perform but never attempted herself. She sterilized a needle, threading it with catgut. "This will hurt," she warned Jake, who grunted in acknowledgement. Her hands were steady as she placed the first stitch, then the second, finding a rhythm by the fifth. Jake remained stoic, wincing only slightly. When finished, she bandaged the wound and mixed a pain powder, wrapping doses in paper. "Take this every 6 hours with water," she instructed. "Keep it clean. Come back tomorrow for Dr. Wilson to check my work." Jake touched the bandage. "Ain't half bad. Head's clearer already." Riley nodded. "Doc taught you well, miss." "I paid attention," Elizabeth said simply. "That'll be 50 cents. After they left, she cleaned the examination area and recorded the treatment in Dr. Wilson's ledger. As she finished, the door opened again, more gently this time. A tall figure stood silhouetted against the gray rain, water dripping from a wide-brimmed hat and a long duster. As he stepped inside, Elizabeth recognized Lucas Kane from the jailhouse. "Doc not here?" he asked, his voice a low rumble that matched his rugged presence. "He's at a birth outside town," Elizabeth replied, straightening. "I'm his assistant, Miss Harper. Can I help you?" Kane removed his hat, revealing hair tied back with a leather cord. He favored his left arm, and Elizabeth noticed a dark stain seeping through his duster. "I'll wait," he said, moving to a bench. "You're bleeding, Mr. Kane," she said matter-of-factly. "Dr. Wilson may not return until evening. I just stitched a scalp wound and can examine your arm." Surprise flickered across his face, quickly masked by weariness. "You know my name. Redstone's too small for secrets, especially for someone who's seen Sheriff Dawson's jail," she replied evenly. A faint smile touched his lips. "Fair point." After a moment, he shed his duster, revealing a torn shirt sleeve soaked with blood. Elizabeth gestured to the examination table. "Sit, please. I'll need to cut the fabric to see the wound." Kane complied, moving with the grace of a man accustomed to hard labor. As she gathered supplies, she felt his eyes tracking her. "You're Caldwell's mail-order bride," he said abruptly. "The one too smart for him." Her hands paused. "I was never his bride, Mr. Kane. Just a woman who traveled far on false promises." She approached with scissors and antiseptic. "This may sting." The wound was a clean 4-inch slice, deep enough for stitches but not life-threatening. "How'd this happen?" she asked, cleaning it. "Barbed wire," he said. "Storm took down a fence. I was fixing it when the rain hit." She nodded, threading a needle. "You'll need stitches. I assume you'd rather I proceed than wait." "You seem capable," Kane said, studying her. "Where'd you learn this?" "Didn't think Eastern ladies' schools taught medicine." "They don't," she admitted, starting the first stitch. "My father believed in practical learning, alongside classics. I assisted a doctor friend of his one summer during a cholera outbreak in Philadelphia. Later, as a teacher, I patched up student scrapes. Children are creative in their injuries." Kane barely flinched as the needle worked. "You talk like a professor, but work like a ranch hand." "I'll take that as a compliment," she replied, tying off a stitch. "Was it meant as one?" "It was," he said. Silence fell as she continued, his ease with her competence a stark contrast to most men she'd met. As she bandaged the wound, she noticed old scars on his arm, knife marks, perhaps bullet wounds. "You've lived a colorful life," she observed. "Some colors I'd rather not repaint," he replied, his tone neutral. "The Grayson gang?" she asked boldly, surprising herself. His eyes narrowed. "Gossip's Redstone's second biggest industry, after cattle." "Were you guilty of the rustling they suspected?" she pressed, cleaning her hands. Kane stood, testing his arm. "No, and Caldwell knows it. But he's never let truth get in the way of a grudge." "Why's he grudge you?" she asked. "Our ranches share a border," Kane explained, reaching for his duster. "There's a spring he wants. I won't sell." Elizabeth calculated the fee, but Kane was already placing $1 on the table, double the rate. "For your skill," he said, "and discretion. Caldwell's got friends who'd frown on me coming here." "Your treatment's between us," she replied. "No one else's business." He nodded, settling his hat. At the door he paused. "Town's talking about you too, Miss Harper." "Not all of it kind." "I've never cared much for approval," she said, though the words rang slightly hollow. Belonging mattered, even to her. "Good," Kane said. "Out here, approval rarely goes to those who earn it most." With that, he stepped into the rain, leaving Elizabeth puzzled by their exchange. Chapter 5. A Crisis and an Ally. That evening, Dr. Wilson returned, soaked and weary from a successful delivery. Elizabeth reported the day's patients, including Kane. The doctor's eyebrows rose. "Lucas Kane came here." "Interesting." He examined her ledger. "Your stitching's improving. Jake's scalp looks professional." "What do you know about Mr. Kane?" Elizabeth asked, feigning casual interest. Dr. Wilson settled into his chair. "Former outlaw, if rumors hold. Rode with the Grayson gang in his youth, bank jobs, stagecoach heists. Never convicted, mind you. Showed up in Redstone 3 years back, bought a ranch with cash and keeps to himself. Is he dangerous? She asked. Not how most think, Dr. Wilson said. Kane doesn't start trouble, but he ends it if pushed. He reads, philosophy history. Borrowed my Emerson last year, returned it with notes in the margins. Elizabeth blinked, intrigued. People are rarely as simple as we assume, Dr. Wilson added, smiling. Something to remember in a town that's judged you based on Caldwell's bruised ego. The following week brought a scorching heat wave that wilted Redstone's spirit. In the office, Elizabeth wiped sweat from her brow as she updated records. The door's bell jingled, and Mrs. Evans rushed in breathless. Miss Harper, come quick. It's Dr. Wilson. What's happened? Elizabeth asked, already on her feet. Collapsed in his study. He's awake but can't move his left side. Speech is slurred. Apoplexy, Elizabeth murmured, recalling medical texts. Stroke. She grabbed the doctor's bag and followed Mrs. Evans at a run. They found Dr. Wilson slumped in his chair, his left face drooping, his right hand clutching his chest. Stay calm, doctor, Elizabeth said, kneeling. I need to examine you. His speech was garbled but intelligible. What's happening? Cerebral hemorrhage, she said, checking his pulse, rapid but steady, and testing his reflexes. His left side barely responded. Mrs. Evans, help me get him to bed. Then fetch cool compresses and mix 10 drops of digitalis in water. It's in the blue vial. They maneuvered Dr. Wilson to his bedroom, where Elizabeth loosened his collar and propped him on his side. Need Palmer, he mumbled. Sheriff Dawson, she asked, confused. No, Dr. Palmer. Cheyenne. Only physician within 50 miles. Elizabeth nodded. Mrs. Evans, can someone ride to Cheyenne now? Billy Carter at the livery could go, Mrs. Evans said, wringing her hands. But it's a hard ride, hours to bring Dr. Palmer back. Then we'll do what we can until he arrives, Elizabeth said, fear gnawing at her. She'd studied extensively, but never faced a case this dire alone. Hours blurred as she administered digitalis to strengthen Dr. Wilson's heart, applied compresses to reduce brain swelling, and monitored him closely. Billy Carter rode for Cheyenne, but Elizabeth knew help wouldn't arrive until morning. As evening deepened, Dr. Wilson's breathing grew labored, his lucid moments fleeting. Elizabeth pored over his medical books, desperate for overlooked solutions. A knock at the door startled her. Mrs. Evans returned with Lucas Kane, his expression grave. Heard about the doc, he said. Came to see if you need anything. Elizabeth, exhausted, met his gaze. Unless you're trained in medicine, Mr. Kane, I'm not sure what help's possible. Kane stepped inside, assessing Dr. Wilson with practiced eyes. Stroke, she nodded. Sent for Dr. Palmer, but he won't be here till morning. Kane checked the doctor's pulse, surprising her with his skill. Digitalis for the heart, he asked, noting the medicine cup. Yes, she said, curiosity piercing her fatigue. How do you know? Spent time with a Shoshone healer years ago, Kane said, focused on Dr. Wilson. Learned their remedies, some of ours. He needs willow bark tea for fever and lavender oil to ease breathing. Elizabeth blinked. Both are in the office. Mrs. Evans can prepare them. Kane gave quiet instructions to Mrs. Evans, then turned to Elizabeth. You've done everything right. Now rest. I'll watch him. I can't. You're spent, he interrupted gently. No use to him if you collapse. Sleep a few hours. I'll wake you if anything changes. Exhaustion and his calm authority won out. Mrs. Evans set up a cot in the next room, and Elizabeth lay down, expecting only to rest her eyes. She woke hours later to moonlight, panic surging as she rushed to Dr. Wilson's room. Kane was still there, vigilant, the doctor sleeping peacefully. Breathing steadier, Kane said softly. Fever broke an hour ago. Elizabeth touched Dr. Wilson's forehead, cool, damp. The willow bark worked, she murmured. Thank you. Kane shrugged. Wilson's a good man. Treated me fair when I arrived. They sat in companionable silence, the doctors breathing a quiet rhythm. Curiosity stirred Elizabeth. How does an ex-outlaw learn medicine from a Shoshone healer? Kane's face remained impassive, but his eyes flickered. After I left the Grayson gang, bounty hunters shot me near the Wind River. Would have died if a Shoshone elder, 2 Eagles, hadn't found me. He was an outcast, saved my life, taught me while I healed. Why'd you leave the gang? She pressed. He met her gaze, his blue eyes intense in the dim light. Couldn't justify doing wrong just because life had wronged me. The raw honesty silenced her. Before she could respond, Dr. Wilson stirred, whispering, "Water." Elizabeth helped him drink, relief flooding her as his affected side showed slight movement. "Doctor, Palmer will be here soon," she assured him. His eyes flicked to Kane, confused. "Kane's been helping," Elizabeth explained. "He knows medicine." Dr. Wilson nodded faintly and drifted back to sleep. "He'll recover," Kane said with quiet certainty. "Not fully, maybe, but enough." "How do you know?" she asked. "Colors returning. Paralysis is easing." Kane stood, stretching. "I should go before town wakes. My being here might stir talk." Elizabeth followed him to the door, aware of the impropriety yet unconcerned. "Thank you," she said. "I don't know why you helped, but I'm grateful." Kane adjusted his hat, thoughtful. "Ever notice how folks here measure worth, Miss Harper? A man's judged by his strength, his land, his herd. A woman by her looks, her cooking, her kids. But the real measure's what you do when someone needs you. By that, you're worth more than most in Redstone." He vanished into the pre-dawn, leaving Elizabeth to ponder his words and the unexpected bond forming between a scholarly spinster and a reformed outlaw, 2 misfits in a town quick to judge. Chapter 6: A New Calling. Dr. Palmer arrived from Cheyenne at sunrise, his weathered face grim as he examined Dr. Wilson. Elizabeth detailed their treatments, omitting Kane's role to protect his privacy. "Your quick thinking likely saved his life," Dr. Palmer said. "He'll recover, but not to his former strength." His prognosis proved accurate. Over weeks, Dr. Wilson regained partial movement and much of his speech, though a slur persisted. His hands trembled too much for intricate procedures. "You'll be my hands now," he told Elizabeth one crisp autumn afternoon in his study. "Doctor, Palmer agrees. Redstone needs a doctor, and you've shown real talent." Elizabeth's eyes widened. "Dr. Wilson, I'm not trained. The town might not accept." "They already do," he interrupted. "You've treated patients under my watch for months. Mrs. Carter says her husband's arm healed straighter than Dr. Palmer's work. Jake brags your stitches left barely a scar." He shifted stiffly. "I'll teach you what you don't know. With my experience and your sharp mind, we'll manage until a trained doctor settles here, if one ever does." Elizabeth gazed out at the golden leaves in Dr. Wilson's garden. A woman practicing medicine was rare, almost unheard of in the West. Yet the prospect thrilled her, a chance to use her intellect for meaningful work. "I'll need to study everything you can teach," she said. Dr. Wilson grinned, his face lopsided. "We'll start with Gray's Anatomy tonight. The diagrams alone'll keep you up." Thus began Elizabeth's medical education. By day, she treated minor injuries and ailments under Dr. Wilson's supervision. By night, she devoured anatomy, physiology, and pharmacology, her hunger for knowledge rivaling her academic days. Redstone's reactions varied. Women welcomed her gentle touch for private ailments, while some men grumbled about propriety. James Caldwell was the loudest critic. One chilly October morning, outside the general store, he blocked her path. "Playing doctor now, Miss Harper," he sneered. Wonder what the Wyoming Medical Board would say about Wilson letting an untrained woman treat folks. Elizabeth met his gaze. "Doctor Wilson oversees all treatments, Mr. Caldwell. Take your concerns to him." A half-crippled man, Caldwell scoffed. "Hardly fit to supervise. This town deserves better than a spinster with medical delusions." Onlookers gathered, drawn to the spectacle. Elizabeth's cheeks burned, but she stood firm. "Redstone deserves someone who cares for its people's health," she said coolly. Now Mrs. Evans awaits her supplies. She moved to pass, but Caldwell stepped closer. "I warned you, your book learning would cause trouble. First, you think you know better than me about marriage, now medicine. Where's it end?" "Problem here," a deep voice cut through. Elizabeth didn't need to turn to know it was Lucas Kane, his presence like a storm rolling in. In the weeks since Dr. Wilson's stroke, Kane had visited the office, ostensibly for his arm but often discussing medical texts Elizabeth studied. Caldwell's face hardened. "None of your business, Outlaw." Kane stepped beside Elizabeth, not touching her but close enough to feel protective. "Miss Harper's conducting business. You're in her way. And you're sticking your nose where it don't belong," Caldwell snapped. Tension crackled, hinting at deeper grudges. Elizabeth intervened. "Gentlemen, I have patients waiting. Your quarrel can continue without me." Kane stepped aside, gesturing for her to pass. After a moment, Caldwell relented, his eyes blazing. Inside, Mrs. Hayes, the storekeeper's wife, whispered, "Those two have been at odds since Kane came to town. Caldwell claims Kane's ranch was promised to him by the old owner, Tom Jenkins, before Kane bought it." "Is there truth to it?" Elizabeth asked, counting coins. Mrs. Hayes shrugged. "Hard to say. Jenkins died of fever before any sale was recorded. Some say Caldwell had a handshake deal. Others say he assumed Jenkins would sell to him, being the big rancher. What I know is Kane paid Jenkins' widow fare. Caldwell offered less, thinking she'd have to take it. This cast Caldwell's animosity in a new light, not just water rights, but a man unused to being denied. Elizabeth pondered this as she returned to the office, wondering what other tensions simmered beneath Redstone's surface. Chapter 7: A Test of Skill and Courage. That evening, as Elizabeth sorted a fresh batch of medical supplies in Dr. Wilson's office, the door creaked open. Lucas Kane stood there, a leather-bound book tucked under his arm. "Thought this might help," he said without preamble, placing it on her desk. "Porter's notes on electrical treatments. Could aid Dr. Wilson's recovery, electricity's effects on nerves." Elizabeth examined the volume, surprised. "This is recent. Where'd you get it?" "Subscribe to medical journals," Kane replied matter-of-factly. "Have 'em shipped from Denver." She raised an eyebrow, intrigued by this rancher's contradictions. Why does a cattleman read scientific journals? A glint of amusement flickered in his eyes. Same reason, a schoolteacher studies anatomy past midnight. Curiosity don't need a diploma. Elizabeth smiled. "Touché, Mr. Kane." She opened the book, noting neat marginalia. "Your notes?" He nodded. "Tried some treatments on a lame horse. Saw improvement. You used medical electricity on a horse, she asked, astonished. Didn't complain, Kane said, a faint smile breaking through. Walks better now. Before she could reply, the door swung open again. Sheriff Dawson entered, his weathered face grim beneath his gray mustache. Kane, he acknowledged curtly, then turned to Elizabeth. Miss Harper, I need the doc. Doctor. Wilson's resting, she replied. I'm handling patients. What's wrong? Dawson hesitated, glancing at Kane. Trouble at the Brennan Ranch. Their youngest, Timmy, fell from the barn loft. Arms broke, but worse, he's got a head injury, unconscious, bleeding. Elizabeth was already grabbing the medical bag. I'm coming. Dr. Wilson taught me to set bones, and I've handled head wounds. No disrespect, ma'am, but this is serious. Boy could die, Dawson said. All the more reason not to argue, she countered, packing supplies. Doctor. Wilson can't make the trip, and Timmy can't wait for Dr. Palmer from Cheyenne. Dawson frowned. Brennan's place is 12 miles out. Ain't proper for a lady to ride that far alone, especially at dusk. I'll escort her, Kane said, surprising both. My horse is fresh, and I know a shortcut over the ridge that saves 3 miles. Caldwell won't like it, Dawson warned. Caldwell ain't the one bleeding, Kane replied bluntly. Your call, Sheriff. After a moment, Dawson nodded. I'll tell Wilson where you're headed. Kane, she's your responsibility. I'm my own responsibility, Elizabeth corrected, securing the bag. Mr. Kane's just guiding and keeping coyotes at bay. 20 minutes later, they were galloping out of Redstone, Elizabeth on a sturdy mare from the livery, Kane on a sleek black stallion. The sun dipped toward the Rockies, painting the prairie in hues of gold and crimson. Despite the urgency, Elizabeth felt a thrill riding astride, her skirts hiked high, the wind tearing her hair from its pins, a far cry from Philadelphia's sedate side-saddle trots through manicured parks. Kane led them onto a narrow trail, climbing a rocky ridge. Below, a river glimmered like molten silver in the fading light. The view almost makes you forget our mission, Elizabeth remarked during a brief pause to rest the horses. Kane nodded, scanning the horizon with a frontiersman's vigilance. Out here, beauty and danger ride together. You learn to savor one without ignoring the other. They reached the Brennan Ranch as twilight deepened. Lamplight glowed from a modest cabin, and a knot of anxious faces, Mr. and Mrs. Brennan and their 3 older children, met them in the yard. Thank God, Mrs. Brennan cried, spotting Elizabeth's medical bag. Her relief turned to confusion. Where's Dr. Wilson? He's recovering from a stroke, Elizabeth explained, dismounting. I'm his assistant, Miss Harper, treating patients under his guidance. Where's your son? Mr. Brennan, a wiry man with calloused hands, looked skeptical. You're a nurse. I'm what Timmy needs right now, Elizabeth said firmly. Time's critical with head injuries. Her confidence swayed him. He led her inside to a narrow bed where Timmy, about 9, lay pale beneath a blood-soaked bandage. Elizabeth worked swiftly, removing the bandage to reveal a deep gash across his forehead and temple. His right arm was bent unnaturally. She checked his pupils, pulse, and breathing, her movements precise. The arm's a clean break, she told the parents. I can set it, but the head injury's more concerning. There may be pressure building in his skull. Mrs. Brennan clutched her husband's arm. Will he die? Not if I can prevent it, Elizabeth replied, opening her bag. I need clean water, more lamps for light, and linen torn into strips. Mr. Kane, I'll need your help. For 2 hours, Elizabeth worked with intense focus, cleaning and stitching the head wound, then setting the broken arm. Kane assisted silently, anticipating her needs, handing her tools, steadying Timmy during delicate moments. The greatest challenge came when she confirmed blood pooling beneath the boy's skull, creating dangerous pressure. With steady hands, she performed a procedure she'd only read about, drilling a small hole in the bone to relieve the pressure. "This will drain the blood," she explained to the horrified Brennans. Without it, his brain could suffer permanent damage. Kane remained at her side, his calm presence anchoring her through the harrowing task. When the procedure was done and a small amount of dark blood had drained, Elizabeth dressed the wound and stepped back, exhaustion etching her face. "Now we wait," she told the Brennans. "The next few hours are critical. If he wakes, it's a good sign." Mrs. Brennan, who'd watched with a mother's anguish, embraced Elizabeth. "Thank you," she whispered. "The sheriff said you were just an assistant, but you knew exactly what to do." "Knowledge isn't confined to lecture halls or men's titles," Elizabeth said gently. "It belongs to anyone who seeks it." Kane, washing blood from his hands, caught her eye. A silent understanding passed between them, needing no words. They stayed through the night, taking turns watching Timmy while the family rested. Near dawn, Elizabeth dozed in a chair when a small voice woke her. "My head hurts." Timmy Brennan was awake, his eyes clear and focused. He answered her questions coherently, and Elizabeth's relief was like a cleansing wave. "You'll be fine," she told him, smiling. By mid-morning, Timmy was sitting up, sipping broth. The Brennans' gratitude was palpable, Mrs. Brennan pressing a basket of homemade preserves into Elizabeth's hands. As they prepared to leave, Mr. Brennan shook Kane's hand. "Didn't expect an outlaw to play nursemaid, but you and Miss Harper saved our boy." Kane tipped his hat. "Just followed her lead." The ride back to Redstone was quieter, the urgency replaced by a shared sense of accomplishment. Elizabeth felt the weight of what she'd done, saving a life through skill and nerve. "You were remarkable back there," Kane said as they neared town. "Not many could have done that." "I had good teachers," she replied, glancing at him, "including a certain rancher with Shoshone remedies." He chuckled, a rare sound that warmed her. Back in Redstone, Elizabeth reported to Dr. Wilson, who marveled at her account. "Trepanning a skull. That's advanced work, Elizabeth. You're a natural." She blushed. "I just applied what I've learned." "Your instincts are as sharp as your mind," he said. "Redstone's lucky to have you." Chapter 8. A dinner fraught with tension. News of Elizabeth Harper's life-saving surgery on young Timmy Brennan rippled through Redstone, Wyoming, cementing her reputation as a capable healer among many, particularly the women who sought her gentle expertise for private ailments. Yet opposition festered, spearheaded by James Caldwell, whose wounded pride fueled gossip about her unseemly medical role and her association with Lucas Kane, especially after their urgent ride to the Brennan Ranch. The whispers painted her as both a scholarly oddity and a scandalous figure, too close to a man with a shadowed past. On a crisp November evening in 1880, Elizabeth received an invitation to a formal dinner at the Redstone Inn, hosted by Mayor Henry Thompson, to honor Nathaniel Grayson, a Chicago investor eyeing Wyoming's booming cattle industry. Dr. Samuel Wilson, still frail from his stroke, urged her to attend. "Grayson's got deep pockets," he said, sipping tea in his study. "Your presence shows Redstone's forward thinking, not just stuck in the old ways." Elizabeth arrived at the inn in her navy silk dress, its high neck and subtle embroidery projecting quiet elegance. Her auburn hair was pinned in a graceful knot, and her wire-rimmed glasses gleamed under the chandelier's glow. The dining room was a rare display of frontier opulence: fine china, polished silver, and candles casting a warm flicker over the long table. Guests included Mayor Thompson and his wife, Martha, Reverend Samuel Michaels, Sheriff Tom Dawson, and, to Elizabeth's chagrin, James Caldwell, his mustache twitching with barely concealed disdain. Nathaniel Grayson, a lean man with sharp features and a gold watch chain glinting against his tailored vest, greeted her with a smile that felt more predatory than warm. "Miss Harper," he said, his voice smooth as whiskey, "your reputation precedes you. Quite the talk of Redstone." Before Elizabeth could respond, a stir at the door drew every eye. Lucas Kane entered, uninvited, his tall frame filling the doorway. Dressed in a black suit tailored to his broad shoulders, he moved with the quiet confidence of a man who needed no one's approval. His raven hair was tied back, and his piercing blue eyes swept the room, landing on Elizabeth with a warmth that sent whispers rippling through the guests. "Miss Harper," he said, bowing over her hand with a grace that belied his rugged reputation, "you look radiant this evening. May I escort you to the table?" She took his arm, her pulse quickening under the weight of shocked stares. "Thank you, Mr. Kane. A fortunate surprise to see you here." Kane guided her to the table, deftly seating her halfway down, strategically distant from Caldwell and Grayson, who sat at the head. The other guests shuffled awkwardly, Caldwell's face darkening like a storm cloud over the Rockies. "I believe you'd reserved a seat for Miss Harper near you, Mr. Grayson," Kane said, his tone polite but unyielding. "However, as we have medical matters to discuss, perhaps you'll permit me to sit beside her instead." Before Grayson could object, Kane pulled out Elizabeth's chair, and she sat, her composure masking the electric tension in the air. Caldwell ended up beside Grayson, his expression thunderous, while the other guests, local merchants, the Reverend and the mayor's wife, adjusted with forced smiles. Dinner began with stilted conversation, the clink of cutlery punctuating remarks about Wyoming's harsh winters, a recent diphtheria scare, and the challenge of sourcing fresh apples for Thanksgiving pies. Elizabeth noted Kane's restraint, eating sparingly, his attention seemingly on her but his senses attuned to the room, like a gunslinger ready for a draw. She sipped her water, acutely aware of Caldwell's glare and Grayson's calculating glances. Mayor Thompson, ever the diplomat, steered the talk to business. "Mr. Grayson, Caldwell mentioned you're eyeing investments in our ranches. What brings a Chicago man to our corner of Wyoming?" Grayson dabbed his mouth with a linen napkin, his small eyes glinting in the candlelight. "Opportunity, Mayor. Chicago's meatpacking industry is a hungry beast, and the future lies with those who control the supply, from pasture to slaughterhouse. Wyoming's grasslands are prime, but expansion demands water rights, a scarce commodity here." Kane's voice cut in, mild but pointed. "Water's indeed scarce, making certain properties, like mine, particularly valuable. My land holds the headwaters of Clear Fork Creek." Grayson's gaze locked onto him. "Precisely, Mr. Kane. A fortunate holding for a man of your background." The room hushed at the veiled jab at Kane's rumored outlaw past. Elizabeth interjected smoothly, her hand resting briefly on Kane's arm. "Fortune favors those who seize opportunity, where others see only hardship. Mr. Kane's ranch thrives through innovative methods, drought-resistant cattle breeds, efficient irrigation. A model for modern ranching." Kane's expression remained stoic, but Elizabeth felt his arm tense. Her knowledge of his operations, gleaned from their discussions over medical texts, implied a closeness that raised eyebrows. Caldwell pounced. "You seem awfully familiar with Mr. Kane's business, Miss Harper. When do you find time to study ranching amid your medical exploits?" Educated minds discuss ideas, Mr. Caldwell, Elizabeth replied coolly. Not everyone limits conversation to weather or saloon gossip. A few nervous chuckles broke the tension. Mrs. Thompson, eager to shift the mood, leaned forward. Miss Harper, I heard about your surgery on the Brennan boy, drilling into his skull. That must have been terrifying. Elizabeth seized the chance to redirect. Medical procedures often seem daunting, Mrs. Thompson, but they are rooted in science. Trepanning, as it's called, dates back to ancient Greece, documented by Hippocrates himself. It's a precise intervention to relieve cranial pressure. As she spoke, Grayson's scrutiny intensified, his expression akin to a collector eyeing a rare artifact. He interrupted, "You have a remarkable mind, Miss Harper. Most women would faint at such a procedure, yet you perform it and discuss it over roast beef." Most women lack access to education, Elizabeth corrected, her tone firm but polite. Given the chance, many would astonish you with their capabilities. Perhaps, Grayson said, his skepticism clear. Yet I wonder if such pursuits satisfy a woman's deeper longings: home, husband, children. The personal jab, meant to remind everyone of her rejection by Caldwell, stung. Elizabeth felt Kane shift, ready to intervene, but she placed a hand on his knee under the table, a silent request to let her handle it. I find purpose in using the gifts I've been given, she said evenly. My intellect is as much a divine creation as any other part of me. Neglecting it would be ungrateful. Wouldn't you agree, Reverend Michaels? The Reverend, caught off guard, cleared his throat. Well, Scripture does urge us not to hide our light under a bushel. Exactly, Elizabeth said, smiling. Redstone has given me unexpected chances to shine my light. I came seeking one path but found another better suited to my strengths. Her gaze met Kane's briefly, a shared understanding passing between them, noticed by the table. Caldwell's patience snapped. Enough metaphors, he barked, leaning forward. Miss Harper arrived as my intended bride, and now keeps improper company with Kane, who blocks progress by hoarding water rights. Let's speak plainly. The blunt accusation landed like a thunderclap. Mayor Thompson intervened. James, this ain't the place. It's exactly the place, Caldwell insisted, voice rising. Everyone's thinking it. Miss Harper poses as a medical assistant while cozying up to an ex-outlaw. Meanwhile, Kane stalls the region's biggest ranch by clinging to land he got under shady circumstances. Kane remained calm, though Elizabeth sensed his coiled tension. My land was bought legally from Tom Jenkins' widow, with papers filed in Cheyenne, he said quietly. As for my friendship with Miss Harper, it's built on respect and shared interests, ideas you wouldn't grasp, Caldwell. Respect, Caldwell scoffed. Is that what you call an unmarried woman visiting your ranch alone? Riding with you at all hours for emergencies? Elizabeth's cheeks flushed, but her voice held steady. Mr. Caldwell, your disappointment in me as a bride doesn't entitle you to slander my character or Mr. Kane's. My duties require travel, always with proper escorts. Nothing improper has occurred. Many here would disagree, Caldwell shot back, glaring at Reverend Michaels, who squirmed. What exactly are you implying, Caldwell? Kane asked, a dangerous edge in his tone. Grayson raised his hands, placating. Gentlemen, we're here for business, not personal squabbles. He turned to Elizabeth with a calculating smile. Though, Miss Harper, your situation fascinates me. I admire intelligent women. When my business here concludes, consider joining me in Chicago. I could introduce you to medical circles, perhaps fund formal training. The offer, amid the heated exchange, stunned the room. Elizabeth blinked, processing. "A generous proposal, Mr. Grayson," she said carefully. "But my commitments to Dr. Wilson and Redstone make that difficult." "Everyone has a price," Grayson said smoothly. "The right incentive can loosen most ties." Kane's jaw tightened. "Miss Harper's not for sale, Grayson." "No," Grayson raised an eyebrow. "She crossed the country for Caldwell's promises. Clearly, she'll move for the right opportunity." Elizabeth's composure wavered, the conversation veering into demeaning territory. "Mr. Grayson, I appreciate your interest in my career, but my decisions aren't swayed by money alone." "Of course," Grayson said, his smile predatory. "Though I wonder if your friendship with Mr. Kane influences your choices." If he were no longer a factor, the implied threat hung heavy. Kane's hand twitched toward his waistcoat, where Elizabeth suspected a concealed Derringer hid. She stood abruptly. "This discussion is exhausted. If you'll excuse me, I must check on Dr. Wilson. He was unwell when I left." Kane rose instantly. "I'll escort you." "No need," Caldwell snapped. "Sheriff Dawson can see Miss Harper home." Dawson looked uneasy. "Actually, I've got reports to file." Elizabeth seized the opening. "Then Mr. Kane's escort is appreciated, Sheriff, as his ranch lies my way." Before further objections, she and Kane bid hasty farewells and left, the dining room crackling with unresolved tension. Outside, the Wyoming night was sharp, stars blazing in a velvet sky. Kane offered his arm, which Elizabeth took, her legs unsteady from the confrontation. "That went about as expected," she said once out of earshot. "They showed their hand," Kane replied grimly. Grayson's offer wasn't spur of the moment. "He's been watching you, gathering leverage. His hint about me not being a factor was a threat. And his interest in me is unsettling," Elizabeth admitted. Mrs. Evans mentioned, a Denver schoolteacher Grayson pursued relentlessly. "It feels like a pattern." They walked in silence, their breath clouding in the cold. Redstone was quiet, save for the saloon's piano and raucous laughter. "Your reputation took a hit tonight," Kane said. "Caldwell made sure of it." Elizabeth sighed. "It's been at risk since I arrived, first as the brainy bride Caldwell rejected, then as the woman daring to practice medicine, now as your supposed scandalous companion. I'm a regular dime novel villainess." Kane's mouth twitched. "We're quite the pair, then, the outlaw and the scholar, scandalizing Redstone's proper folk." "Not the life I planned leaving Philadelphia," she admitted, a wry smile forming. "But there's a certain freedom in it. When everyone disapproves, their judgment loses its sting." They reached Dr. Wilson's house, pausing at the gate. Lamplight glowed from the study, Dr. Wilson's silhouette moving within. "What now?" Elizabeth asked, facing Kane. Moonlight carved his features in silver and shadow. "Grayson won't quit," Kane said. "Not on my water rights, nor on you. He's a man used to getting what he wants. Caldwell's desperate, too. His jabs at my land's shady acquisition suggest he's hunting legal loopholes. We've made ourselves targets by standing together tonight," Elizabeth said, shivering, not entirely from the cold. "We were targets already," Kane corrected gently. "Now they know we're not alone or weak." He hesitated, then adjusted her shawl, his fingers lingering. "Get some rest, Elizabeth. We'll need to warn Dr. Wilson what's coming." The use of her first name warmed her more than the shawl. "Good night, Lucas," she replied, testing his name. His rare smile lit his face, a glimpse of the man beneath the guarded exterior. With a slight bow, he turned toward the livery stable, vanishing into the shadows. Elizabeth entered the house, her mind racing with the evening's revelations and the looming challenges ahead. Dr. Wilson waited in his study, a glass of bourbon in hand, concern etching his face. "Survived Grayson's dinner, I see," he said, gesturing to a chair. "Mrs. Evans says the town expected a brawl before dessert." Elizabeth sank into the seat, tension draining from her shoulders. No brawl, but plenty of threats, veiled and overt. She recounted the evening, Caldwell's accusations, Grayson's unsettling offer, the undercurrent of danger. Dr. Wilson's expression grew grave. "Grayson's Chicago proposal worries me most. Mrs. Evans heard from a friend in Denver about Grayson's fixation on educated women. He pursues them, and when they resist," he trailed off, swirling his bourbon. "The schoolteacher," Elizabeth said. "Am I in real danger?" "Grayson's a predator who's marked you," Dr. Wilson said. "Caldwell's a desperate man with a bruised ego. Together, they're a serious threat to you and Kane." "What do we do?" she asked. "Stay visible," he advised. "Public spaces, never alone, especially after dark." He hesitated, then added, "Consider accepting Kane's protection more." "Formally?" Elizabeth raised an eyebrow. "Marriage doctor." "Conventions can shield as much as they bind," he said dryly. "Sometimes they're a fortress." She considered this, the evening's events replaying. "Kane and I share respect and common ground. I won't marry out of fear, even if," she paused, heat rising to her cheeks. "Even if your feelings for him run deeper," Dr. Wilson finished gently. "Focus on countering Grayson and Caldwell, but don't let pride block help from the right source." His words lingered as Elizabeth retired to her room, sleep elusive as she wrestled with the night's confrontations and the uncertain path ahead. Chapter 9: A Public Reckoning. Dawn broke with pale winter light filtering through Elizabeth's window. She rose, weary but resolute, dressing in her forest green wool dress, its simplicity a quiet armor. Outside, a crowd gathered at the sheriff's office, their voices carrying through the frosty air. Curious, Elizabeth hurried downstairs, finding Dr. Wilson at the breakfast table, the Redstone Weekly Herald spread before him, his face grim. "Read this," he said, sliding the paper toward her. The headline chilled her. "Concerns mount over unlicensed medical practices in Redstone." The article, clearly influenced by Caldwell and Grayson, questioned Elizabeth's qualifications, suggested Dr. Wilson's stroke impaired his judgment, and described her trepanning of Timmy Brennan as reckless experimentation by an untrained woman. "This is Caldwell's revenge," Elizabeth said, her hands trembling as she set the paper down. "And Grayson's move to discredit me." "They avoid naming you directly," Dr. Wilson noted. "Keeps it shy of libel while pointing fingers clear enough." Mrs. Evans burst in, indignant. "Have you seen this nonsense? Half the town's buzzing." Mrs. Brennan's furious, stormed into the general store, swearing you saved her boy when no one else could. "Some are on our side," Elizabeth said, touched. "More than you think," Mrs. Evans replied. "That crowd at the sheriff's office. Folks are demanding Sheriff Dawson do something about the article. He says it's just opinion, but people are riled, especially those you've helped." Dr. Wilson nodded. "Caldwell and Grayson misjudged by attacking your work, not just your tie to Kane. Folks gossip about propriety, but they care who heals their kin." Elizabeth stood, resolve hardening. "I need to speak to Sheriff Dawson. If they are using the press to undermine me, this is bigger than my reputation. It's about serving Redstone's health." "You'll walk into a storm," Dr. Wilson warned. "Tempers are high." "Then I'll answer with calm and facts," she said, grabbing her shawl. "Hiding only strengthens their story." Outside, the morning was crisp, every sound sharp across the frozen landscape. As Elizabeth neared the sheriff's office, raised voices spilled out. She recognized Jake Miller's bellow, the man whose scalp she'd stitched. "My wife would have bled out if Miss Harper hadn't stepped in," he roared. "Don't care if she's got no fancy degree. She saved Mary when our baby came early." Sheriff Dawson's measured tone responded, though his words were unclear. Then another voice joined, deep, authoritative, unmistakably Kane's. "Wyoming law allows medical apprenticeships under licensed physicians," he said. Dr. Wilson registered Miss Harper as his apprentice with the Territorial Board in Cheyenne 3 weeks ago. Papers should arrive soon. Elizabeth paused, stunned. Kane hadn't mentioned this legal safeguard. Before she could process, the door opened, and several men exited, nearly colliding with her. "Miss Harper," Jake exclaimed, "we're telling the sheriff this newspaper hogwash is pure bunk." "Pardon my language." "I appreciate your support, Mr. Miller," she said, suddenly the center of attention as others noticed her. Kane emerged, his expression warming when he saw her. Dressed in practical rancher's gear, he carried the same dignity he'd shown at dinner. "Miss Harper," he greeted, "I was explaining your legal standing as Dr. Wilson's apprentice." "A detail you neglected to share," she said, giving him a pointed look. A faint flush touched his cheeks. "Should have asked you first, but after we talked about your future here, it seemed wise to secure your position." Sheriff Dawson appeared, looking harried. "Miss Harper, best come inside. This is getting out of hand." She followed Kane close behind. Mayor Thompson was inside, twisting his hat nervously. "This article stirred a hornet's nest," Dawson said, gesturing to the paper. "No direct accusations, but the implications are clear. Caldwell and Grayson are in my office hourly, demanding I investigate your practice." "On what grounds?" Elizabeth asked calmly. "I work under Dr. Wilson's supervision, as the law permits." "That's what I keep saying," Dawson replied. "But Grayson's threatening to write the territorial governor about public safety." Mayor Thompson cleared his throat. "The town council meets tomorrow. Grayson wants to speak formally. As a potential investor, we can't just ignore him. And if his goal's to ruin Miss Harper and force Kane to sell his land," Kane asked sharply, "will you sacrifice them for his money?" Thompson flushed. "No one's sacrificing anyone. But we must weigh all sides." "Including those whose lives Miss Harper saved," Kane pressed. "The families she's helped." Elizabeth touched Kane's arm, feeling his tension. "I appreciate your defense, Mr. Kane, but I'll speak for myself." She faced the mayor and sheriff. "Gentlemen, let me address the council tomorrow alongside Grayson. Let Redstone judge for itself." Dawson nodded slowly. "Fair enough, but Caldwell's rallying his allies. It'll be contentious." "Truth often is," Elizabeth replied. "But it endures." As they left, Elizabeth and Kane walked down Redstone's main street, whispers trailing them. "You shouldn't have to justify your skills," Kane said, anger simmering beneath his calm. "Yet I must," she said. "Not just for me, but for Dr. Wilson, our patients, and every girl like Timmy Brennan's sister, who might dream beyond society's limits." Kane stopped, facing her. "You keep surprising me, Elizabeth Harper. Most fight for survival. You fight for ideals." "As do you," she countered. "You could sell to Caldwell, take the cash and start fresh elsewhere. Yet you stay, defending what's yours." A smile tugged at his lips. "Maybe we're both stubborn fools. Or maybe we see what's worth fighting for," she said, their eyes locking, the bond between them deepening. The church bell tolled, breaking the moment, and they continued to Dr. Wilson's office, their shoulders brushing in silent solidarity. Neither noticed James Caldwell watching from an alley by the newspaper office, his face twisted with a bitterness that had grown dangerous. Nor did they see Nathaniel Grayson at the inn's window, his gaze tracking Elizabeth with a predator's focus, plotting his next move. Chapter 10. The Town Hall Showdown. Redstone's Town Hall, a sturdy clapboard building at the town's heart, doubled as courthouse, meeting place, and occasional barn dance venue. On this frigid December morning it was packed, townsfolk crammed onto wooden benches, the air thick with the scent of wool, leather, and wood smoke. Elizabeth sat in the front row beside Dr. Wilson, whose presence, despite his frailty, lent silent weight to her cause. She wore her navy dress, its simplicity underscoring her professionalism, her hair in a neat knot. Her composure masked the storm within, as she folded her hands calmly in her lap. Behind them sat patients she'd treated. The Brennans, Jake and Mary Miller, Lucy from the saloon discreetly at the back, and others whose ailments she'd eased. Their support bolstered her, though she kept her expression neutral. Lucas Kane entered as Mayor Thompson called the meeting to order, slipping quietly to the back. When Elizabeth glanced at him, he gave a slight nod, a steadying promise that calmed her nerves. "We're here to address concerns about Redstone's medical practices," Mayor Thompson began, his usual warmth subdued. "Mr. Nathaniel Grayson, a respected Chicago businessman, has asked to speak." Grayson rose, his tailored suit and gold watch chain marking him as an outsider. Caldwell sat beside him, smug satisfaction on his face. "Thank you, Mayor," Grayson began, his voice carrying effortlessly. "I come not to impose, but as a concerned investor with Redstone's future at heart." He paced, commanding attention. "In my short time here, I've seen Redstone's potential, a hub for Wyoming's cattle industry with the right investment. But I've also seen practices that alarm me, practices that in civilized cities would be deemed dangerous." His gaze settled on Elizabeth, feigning regret. "I refer to allowing an untrained woman to perform complex procedures without credentials or proper oversight. Miss Harper's intentions may be noble, but good intentions don't replace medical training." Murmurs rippled, some agreeing, others objecting. Grayson raised his hands. "Consider the risks. Would you let an untrained man build your house, knowing it might collapse? And trust your legal affairs to someone who's only read law books? Then why risk your lives with someone whose qualifications are mere study under a stroke-crippled physician?" Dr. Wilson tried to rise, anger flushing his face, but Elizabeth restrained him gently. This was her fight. Grayson continued, "I offer a solution. As a gesture to Redstone, I'll fund a proper physician's practice, a university-trained doctor from Chicago to provide the care this town deserves. Further, recognizing Miss Harper's intelligence, I'll sponsor her training at the Women's Medical College of Chicago so she can practice legitimately, not experiment on unsuspecting patients." The room erupted in debate. Elizabeth stood slowly, waiting for Mayor Thompson to restore order. "Mr. Mayor, may I respond?" she asked, her voice clear despite her racing heart. "The floor's yours, Miss Harper," Thompson said, relieved by her calm. She stepped forward, facing the crowd. "Mr. Grayson speaks of credentials, which have value, but on the frontier, they're often a luxury. What matters are results, lives saved, pain eased, healing delivered." She gestured to the Brennans. "Ask Timmy if he cares about my lack of a diploma, or if he's grateful his brain was saved. Ask Mary Miller if my experiments harmed her when her baby came early, or if my training under Dr. Wilson saved them both." Her voice grew stronger. "Redstone, like many frontier towns, works with what it has. Dr. Wilson has served faithfully for 15 years. When his stroke limited him, he shared his knowledge so this town wouldn't go without care. She faced Grayson. As for your generous offer, its timing and motives raise questions. Why does a Chicago investor suddenly care about Redstone's health? Perhaps because I've allied with Mr. Kane, whose water rights you seek for your cattle venture with Mr. Caldwell. Caldwell surged to his feet. That's outrageous. Grayson's trying to help, and you sling accusations. Sheriff Dawson stood. Sit down, James. Miss Harper has the floor. Elizabeth nodded. Your offer seems kind, but would this new doctor serve all or favor your interests? Mr. Kane informs me my apprenticeship under Dr. Wilson is registered with the Territorial Medical Board, legally recognized in Wyoming. Grayson and Caldwell exchanged startled glances. Elizabeth pressed on. I don't claim to be a full physician. I work under Dr. Wilson's guidance, learning daily. I offer Redstone dedicated care based on current medical knowledge, not perfection but commitment. She met the eyes of her patients. I ask only to keep serving, with transparency about my limits and a pledge to grow for your benefit. As she sat, Timmy Brennan stood, his arm still in a cast. Miss Harper saved my life, he declared. Ma says the hole she drilled let the bad blood out so my brain could heal. Don't care if she went to college, she fixed me. His simple words broke the tension, drawing laughter and nods. Others rose. Mary Miller spoke of Elizabeth's childbirth aid, an elderly man of her diagnosing his pneumonia, Lucy of her compassionate care. As testimonials continued, Kane moved to the front, his presence balancing Caldwell and Grayson. Mayor Thompson called for order. We've heard both sides. Mr. Grayson's concerns about credentials are valid, but Miss Harper's impact is undeniable. He turned to Dr. Wilson. Doctor, as Redstone's only licensed physician, your view matters. Does Miss Harper's practice under you endanger this town? Dr. Wilson rose, leaning on the bench. In 30 years, I've trained 3 apprentices who became physicians, he said, his speech slurred but sharp. Elizabeth Harper outshines them all. Her gender and lack of formal training pale against her skill and judgment. He glared at Grayson. As for an outside doctor, any genuine physician is welcome to practice here. But pushing out someone who's proven her worth reeks of ulterior motives. Grayson's face hardened. You're sentimental, not practical. Frontier medicine tolerates amateurs, but Redstone needs proper care, not well-meaning novices. Better a novice who stays through blizzards and accidents than a proper doctor who shows up only for profit, Kane interjected, earning murmurs of agreement. Mayor Thompson cleared his throat. We've heard enough. The council will deliberate. He, Sheriff Dawson, the bank manager, and Reverend Michaels withdrew, leaving the room buzzing. Elizabeth sat, her calm facade hiding in her turmoil. Dr. Wilson patted her hand. You did proud, Elizabeth. Whatever happens, you showed Redstone your heart. Kane approached, speaking softly. Caldwell and Grayson are huddling by the door, looking worried. They didn't expect the town's support. Support's one thing, Elizabeth replied. Official approval's another. The council's tied to Caldwell's business. But they're tied to you too, Kane said. You've healed their families. That's stronger than money. The council returned, and silence fell. Mayor Thompson spoke. After deliberation, the council rules that Miss Harper may continue practicing under Dr. Wilson's supervision, with the expectation she pursue formal certification via correspondence with the Women's Medical College. Mr. Grayson's offer for a town physician is appreciated but declined. Other investments will be considered on merit. Relief flooded Elizabeth, though she kept her composure. Caldwell stormed forward, furious. This is madness. You're choosing an unqualified woman over progress because she's charmed you with minor fixes. Enough, James, Sheriff Dawson said. The council's decided. You're swayed by emotion like a woman, Caldwell spat, turning to the crowd. Fooled by a pretty face, not facts. Grayson restrained him. This isn't helping, James, he murmured, voice carrying. We'll find another way. The threat lingered as they exited, Caldwell casting a venomous glance at Elizabeth and Kane. As the meeting dissolved, Kane approached. It's not over. They won't quit. I know, Elizabeth said. But we've won today. The day blurred with congratulations from townsfolk, many relieved she'd continue her work. By evening, Elizabeth sat in Dr. Wilson's study, reviewing notes, exhausted but triumphant. A knock roused her. Mrs. Evans returned, worried. Miss Harper, it's Mr. Kane. Says it's urgent. On the porch, Kane's face was grim in the lantern light. Caldwell and Grayson left town an hour ago with 3 rough types, hired guns from the mining camp north of here. Livery boy says they're headed to my ranch. Why? Elizabeth began, then realized. Your land deed. If they can't force you legally, they'll try theft or intimidation. Kane nodded. I need to get there now. I'm coming, she said firmly. Too dangerous, he protested. Which is why you can't go alone, she countered. If there's trouble, you'll need medical help. Kane studied her, seeing her resolve. No arguing with you, is there? None, she confirmed. 2 minutes to grab supplies and tell Dr. Wilson. Chapter 11, Confrontation at the Ranch. 20 minutes later, they rode hard through the Wyoming night, the winter moon casting a ghostly glow. Elizabeth wore a split riding skirt borrowed from Lucy, practical for the rough terrain, with a medical bag strapped to her saddle. Kane had insisted she carry a small derringer tucked in her pocket. Caldwell's desperate, he explained as they galloped. Grayson's pulling out if he can't secure my water rights. Caldwell faces ruin. Desperate men are deadly. And Grayson doesn't take rejection well, Elizabeth added, recalling Mrs. Evans' warnings about his vindictive streak. They approached Kane's ranch cautiously, dismounting a quarter-mile away and creeping through a cottonwood grove. The cabin was dark, but 5 horses were tethered outside, confirming Caldwell, Grayson, and their hired men were inside. Voices drifted through the half-open door, Caldwell's agitated, Grayson's cool, the hired men's gruff. It's gotta be here, Caldwell was saying. Kane wouldn't keep the deed in a bank where records are public. Check behind the books, Grayson suggested. Men like him think they are clever. Kane tensed beside Elizabeth, restraining himself from charging in. They watched shadows move past the window, the men ransacking the cabin, books scattered, furniture overturned. What's the plan? Elizabeth whispered. Get the sheriff, Kane murmured. This is breaking and entering, maybe theft. If Dawson sees it, they're done. That'll take hours, she objected. They'll be gone, maybe with your deed. Kane's face was grim. Then we confront them, stall till dawn when travelers might pass. Before they could act, a shout came from inside. Found it. Hidden drawer in the desk. Kane moved, Elizabeth at his heels. They burst through the door to find Caldwell clutching a leather document case, triumph on his face. Grayson stood nearby, while 3 burly, unshaven men in miners' clothes turned, startled. Breaking and entering Caldwell, Kane said coldly, revolver trained on them. Theft too. Sheriff Dawson'll want a word. Caldwell recovered fast. 3 witnesses'll say, you pulled a gun when we came to talk business. Our word against yours. And mine, Elizabeth added, stepping into the light. A witness the town council deemed credible this morning. Grayson's eyes narrowed. Miss Harper, an unexpected pleasure, though perhaps not given your attachment to Mr. Kane. Drop the case, Caldwell, Kane ordered, ignoring Grayson. Not a chance, Caldwell replied, emboldened. Johnson Carter, Reed, earn your pay. The hired men advanced, undeterred by Kane's gun. Elizabeth acted on instinct, pulling her derringer and firing into the ceiling. The deafening shot froze everyone. Next one hits flesh, she said, her hand steady despite her pounding heart. Grayson laughed, genuinely amused. You're full of surprises, Miss Harper. Such potential, wasted in this dust bowl when you could shine in Chicago. I'm shining here, she retorted, where knowledge serves need, not fashion. Where a woman's mind is hers to wield, and value lies in contribution, not convention. Kane used the distraction to edge closer to Caldwell. The documents, James. Now. Caldwell clutched the case. This land was mine. Jenkins promised. No paper proves it, Kane said. That's why you're stealing instead of suing. Hand it over. For a tense moment, Caldwell resisted, but Grayson intervened. Give it to him, James. This was a poor plan. But you said we needed the water rights, Caldwell protested. I never said steal them, Grayson replied smoothly. There are other properties, other acquisitions. His gaze lingered on Elizabeth, chilling her. Seeing Grayson's retreat, Caldwell cursed and threw the case to the floor. This ain't over, Kane. Neither of you belongs here. Redstone'll see it. Kane retrieved the case, checking the deed. Today's meeting says otherwise. Get out. If I see you on my land again, I won't ask questions. The intruders left, their horses thundering into the night. Elizabeth slumped against the wall, lowering the derringer as adrenaline faded. Kane secured the door and took the pistol from her trembling fingers. You all right? He asked gently. Yes, she said, steadying her breath. Though shooting at ceilings isn't something I'd care to repeat. You were magnificent, Kane said, his eyes softening. Terrifying but magnificent. Laughter bubbled up, a release of tension they both shared. As they restored order to the ransacked cabin, righting furniture, reshelving books, Elizabeth marveled at their ease, moving in sync, anticipating each other's needs without words. By dawn, with the fire stoked and coffee brewing, they sat at the cleared table, exhaustion mingling with relief. What now? Elizabeth asked, cradling her mug. Caldwell and Grayson are beaten, but not broken. Grayson's the type to cut losses, Kane said thoughtfully. With the council backing you and their theft foiled, he may decide Redstone's not worth his time. Caldwell's pride'll keep him fighting, but without Grayson's money, he's limited. His debts will force him to focus on saving his ranch, not feuds. So we've won for now, Elizabeth said. We have, Kane agreed, meeting her eyes. But victory raises questions. Like whether our partnership was just tactical. Or something lasting. The directness caught her off guard, though she'd pondered the same. I've learned to be wary of lasting, she said carefully. I came to Redstone on one man's promises, which were lies. But they led you to another whose promises hold, Kane replied quietly. I'm not Caldwell, Elizabeth. I don't want a servant or a trophy, but a partner, someone whose mind sharpens mine. And my excessive learning, she asked, a playful edge softening the weight of the question. It's what drew me to you, he said without hesitation. Your brilliance, your courage, your defiance of what's proper for what's right. Those are rare, man or woman. Warmth spread through her, unrelated to the coffee or fire. When I left Philadelphia, she said slowly, I thought I'd traded my intellectual life for companionship. I never dreamed of finding both in one person." Kane reached across the table, his hand covering hers. "I'm not asking for an answer now. Take your time. The best things are worth waiting for." As sunlight painted the cabin in gold, Elizabeth looked at the man opposite her, a complex, self-educated former outlaw who'd seen her worth when others saw only defiance. In that moment, she knew she needed no more time. Turning her hand, she laced their fingers. "I came west for a husband who'd value my mind," she said softly. "How fitting I found him not in the man who advertised for a learned wife, but in one who proved respect through actions." Kane's smile bloomed, revealing the soul beneath his reserve. "Is that a yes, Dr. Harper?" "It's a yes, Mr. Kane," she replied, her smile mirroring his. "Though I'm still medical apprentice Harper for now." "For now," he agreed, standing to draw her to her feet. "But I've no doubt Redstone'll soon boast its first female physician, and I'll be proud to be known as Dr. Harper's husband." As Lucas Kane kissed Elizabeth Harper in the sunlit cabin they'd defended together, neither could foresee how true his words would prove. Within 5 years, Elizabeth completed her medical certification through correspondence with the Women's Medical College, establishing a practice serving 3 counties. Kane's quiet legal savvy helped draft Wyoming's early laws protecting married women's property rights. James Caldwell, crippled by debt, sold his ranch piecemeal to small farmers, fostering a diverse community. Nathaniel Grayson returned to Chicago, chasing other ventures, though whispers of his pursuit of educated women occasionally reached Redstone. Redstone grew, shaped by the scholar bride rejected for knowing too much and the reformed outlaw who saw her mind as her greatest asset. Their partnership, in medicine, law, and life, became a cornerstone of the town, proving value lies where others overlook it. Young women inspired by Elizabeth flocked to her office, seeking not just care but courage. She'd tell them the truth she'd learned: education is never too much. It's the start of freedom. To forge your path, claim your worth, and find those who cherish you for your mind, not despite it. Epilogue: a legacy of courage. Years later, as Redstone streets bustled with new shops and a proper schoolhouse, Elizabeth, now Dr. Harper, stood in her clinic, a framed medical degree on the wall. Beside her, Lucas, her husband and partner, reviewed legal papers for a community land trust. Their home, once a battleground, was now a haven of books, laughter, and shared dreams. The tale of the mail-order bride and the maverick became Redstone legend, told at 4th of July picnics and winter hearth fires. It was a story of 2 outsiders who defied a town's judgment, proving that true worth isn't in fitting molds but in breaking them. And for every girl who dared to read beyond her primer or dream beyond her kitchen, Elizabeth's words echoed: "Your mind is your freedom. Use it and the world will follow." Up next, check out 2 more tales of grit and heart on your screen. If this story struck a chord, don't miss them. Just click and dive in. And subscribe with the notification bell on so you never miss a Redstone saga.